Hello, I'm your host Jim McLean. Welcome to another episode of the BanterFlix movie review show here on NVTV. Let's see what movies we'll be looking at tonight. We'll be reviewing Halloween Ends, which is out in cinemas now. Our pick of the streams is Marvel's Werewolf by Night, which is available to watch on Disney Plus now. And we'll wrap up with What We Do in the Shadows, which we're screening as part of the Dark Hedges International Film Festival. So that's what we've lined up for you this week, and I'm joined here in the NVTV studio by not one, but two local filmmakers, Jim McMorrow.
Hello.
And Adam Neeson.
Hi, Jim.
Hello to you both, guys. We have a packed show. You are both busting to talk about Halloween Ends, particularly Jim. I can sense these things. So let's get stuck into some movie news.
Hurt me? I know what you're doing, Donnie. You don't owe this dude nothing.
Damien's fighting the world and he's trying to hurt people.
I vouch for you. You think you mad? Try spending half your life in a cell. Watching somebody else live your life. I'm coming for everything. You threatening me?
So that's a look at Creed 3. The trailer just dropped this week, literally as we were starting to record, so well done you, Adam Neeson, for pointing that out. It's going to be out next year. It's directed by Michael B. Jordan. Adam, since you pointed it out, I'm going to come to you first. Are you a fan of the Rocky spin-off franchise that is Creed and excited about a third film in the series?
Well, of course, Jim, I got the update on my phone through my Creed head app, because I'm a big Creed head. I have seen Creed 1 and a bit of Creed 2. I turned Creed 2 off because I was like, Creed 2. Yeah, I'll watch Creed 3. I like Jonathan Majors. He looks like a tank. And I'll watch him fight anybody, including me.
Okay, I don't know we want to see him fight you, but if you're watching, John, maybe we can make it happen. I don't know how I feel about this. Didn't everything that really needed to be said about Creed really was pretty much said in the first film. Then, because of the box office success, a sequel was demanded. We had the Dragos coming in, and there was parts of it I liked, but I thought it was not a worthy sequel. It didn't really follow the highlights of Ryan Coogler's original, which took me by surprise, if I'm honest. I enjoyed it for what it was. I enjoyed it a hell of a lot more than I thought I was going to. But now we're with this third film. I don't know. Trailer looks okay. I've just had one look at it through my phone like the rest of us. Jim, what about you?
I'm fairly indifferent to the Creed and Rocky franchise, if I'm honest with you. I think, everything probably needed to be said with the first Rocky back in, 76. I enjoyed watching the Creed movies, but I'm not a huge fan of them. It's probably going to be a sort of Sunday night pre-work the next morning type of screening for me.
But the question I'll ask, and I'm going to ask, you're both filmmakers. I know we haven't seen the film, so we can't judge it. Excited to see what Michael B. Jordan's going to be like behind the camera?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's proven himself to be a really good actor, and he's proven himself to be sort of a memorable recent star. He's learned from some very good directors, including Ryan Coogler, on 2 occasions, I believe, Creed and Black Panther. So, I think he's got a good cast in with him. Tessa Thompson, I think, is absolutely criminally underrated actress and deserves more kudos than she gets. Mm-hmm. But, time will tell. We'll see.
Yeah, and Tessa Thompson is criminally underused in Creed 2, I will say that point. Adam, what about you? Again, I know we're talking about a film, we're only looking at a trailer, so it's not much to go by. But I'm intrigued and looking forward to see what Michael B. Jordan is going to be like behind the camera. Like Jim, I think he is a fantastic screen presence, so I'm intrigued to see what he's going to be like behind the camera. What about you?
It's interesting that he's taken the same route as Stallone, where he ended up directing some of the Rockies as well, and we got the best Rocky with Rocky 4. Everybody agree? Which had Paulie fall in love with a robot. So if whoever Michael B. Jordan's partner is in this, if he doesn't fall in love with a robot, then Michael B. Jordan's failed as a director.
Okay, well, you heard it here first, viewers. If there is a robot in Creed 3, Adam predicted it.
Happy birthday, Paulie.
Yeah, but don't forget the new cut of Rocky IV did cut that out, because Stallone did, well, some of us were all sitting at home just binging on The Sopranos. Stallone went back and retinkered with Rocky IV during the pandemic. So we'll have to wait and see. I'm intrigued. The boxing sequences look pretty good. I mean, they've been pretty good throughout the 3 Creed films. So let's see. It's out next year. I think with that, we shall move on. You guys are busting at the bit to get talking about Halloween Ends. So let's have a look at what's in cinemas now.
I was certain that I saw him watching me.
You pretend like you moved on, but you're actually just obsessed with death.
What are you gonna do when Michael comes back for you? Because he is coming.
But this time, something feels different. He's more dangerous.
So that's a look at Halloween Ends, starting in cinemas now. Jim, I'm going to come to you first. We all know you're a massive Halloween fan. You're a fan of the series. You're also Mr. Family Drama, because you've branched out into that now of late with your short films. So this is the concluding chapter in this new Halloween reboot for the series. Let's not talk too much around spoilers. You can talk as much as you want, but generally, what did you think of this?
Generally, I mean, in a nutshell, I enjoyed it. I think that, my wife did say to me on my 3rd watch of it that, because she really didn't like it, she said, what would it take for a Halloween movie to disappoint you? So maybe I'm going in with a biased lens, but I have to say, and not to go into too many spoilers, I think that the different direction that it takes is both the best and worst thing about it, because on the one hand, it does serve up a fairly unique sequel to maybe a franchise that, its tropes have been tired and tested a little too much. But the problem is that for Halloween fans, it's a conclusion to a saga of 44 years that falls immediately flat, because we're spending the bulk of the movie with a different character. And in that sense, it's very underwhelming. I would also say, I think it's incredibly, the characterizations of Laurie and Allison and so forth are very, very inconsistent. It makes, I'm not screaming for documentarian realism in a Halloween movie, but I would say I don't think anybody's behaving in a realistic way, and it does have its faults. And one of the things that really disappointed me was that I heard David Gordon Green say that it was going to be a more suspenseful film, and Michael was going to be sort of more akin to the way he was in '78, and I suppose it was, in that in Halloween Ends we had no sequences of that, and then we had one shot in this. But for someone who's a true blood fan of the original, it did disappoint me as a Halloween movie. It didn't even look like a Halloween movie. It didn't feel like a Halloween movie in terms of the holiday even. But as a separate entity, I did enjoy it, I have to say.
Okay, so maybe in 30, 35 years, we'll be all comparing this to Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, the night he didn't come home. And there's a lot of nods in that throughout the film, purposely, from the font, from the title cards as well. I've watched this once. I'm not quite prepared to go your level, Jim, with 3 viewings. I would say those on that 3rd viewing, it will not be your last on the cinema. There are things I like about it, and like you, there's things I think that really drag it down. One of those is the fact that I really didn't like Halloween Kills. I thought it was a really poor film. I nearly swore. I'm sorry, viewers, but I did think it was poor. And I think, having watching this, I think it's even more of a pointless middle chapter. Really, ultimately, other than the fact that one character's not there who was in Halloween Kills, there's not a lot that brings to this party. There's interesting choices. I got, for me, nods to Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Friday the 13th, 4 or 5. I might be getting that wrong. I've got 2 horror heads here, so I will stand to be corrected. You've hit the nail on the head for me. The narrative choice and what they've tried to do, without going into spoilers, with the character of Michael and other characters that this film is more focused on than even more so than Laurie and even Alison, is the fact that a lot of the characters are 1 minute tonally one way, then the other way. And I know that David Gordon Green was tinkering with this film for quite a bit, and I wonder just how much he was tinkering, what in a scale of reshoots happened. I don't want to say into spoilers. I think we need to do a podcast at some point, maybe get the 2 of you on, we can talk about it more spoilerifically. There's interesting narrative choices. I think there's a great opening sequence that is perfect on its own right, but in terms of the grand scheme, the overall structure, I think it's poor. John Carpenter's original did not rely on gore, and I wasn't scared. And I know Leo McGuigan, good friend of yours and mine, Jim. I don't know Adam, maybe you know him too. We have this idea, does a horror film have to scare you to work? I always say, look, it doesn't have to necessarily scare you, but it has to get underneath your skin. You want to go back in maybe 2-3 weeks and think about something and get a shudder. It doesn't necessarily need to make you jump in your seat. I know a composer can do that at the best of times. I find it very underwhelming, but not as bad as some of the reviews. Now, Adam, we come to you because you have a review written for the Fight Club, NI, where I believe it was given a 4-star review.
It was, Jim, because I loved it. I hated Kills. Came out of Kills thinking this is terrible. Like, I don't want to see Laurie and Michael ever again, and it's kind of sullied my like for the 2018 movie. But going into this, the first 10-minute sequence is fantastic and sets up what I think carries on throughout the whole film. Is it brought back the humanity to the Halloween franchise that was back in '78 in the original. The character of Corey, it's not really a spoiler, but we see him go through a transformation throughout the movie that we are implied upon in the original with Michael. And Corey in this, we get to see how the town of Haddonfield has corrupted everybody, even the people that we love, like Laurie and Alison. There's something a little bit more biting to Alison's character in this towards the end that I thought. Even the citizens of the town, there's a sequence where Laurie Strode is smiling walking out of a convenience store, and someone says to her, "What are you smiling for?" Because they were affected by Michael Myers. They feel like Laurie was a catalyst to Michael Myers attacking the town, which I loved. It made me sit up in my seat and go, oh, something interested in this franchise for once. True, there isn't much killing, you know. If the killing sequence in it, I thought was cool. It was better than Kills. You know, if you want to go see a movie where Michael Myers is killing everybody, this isn't it. And obviously from last year, that's not what we wanted, you know. It's not like Friday the 13th 42, Jason Goes to Ballycastle, you know what I mean? It's where he's just murdering the whole town. It's something a lot smaller, and I think it really benefited from it. But as a trilogy end and a saga end, maybe fumbled the ball in the last 10 minutes of how they sort out the characters. But I was pretty satisfied throughout.
I'm going to come back to you, Jim. And I know we could very easily spend a whole episode talking about this, and this film in particular. But what about that idea? I do think in my heart of hearts, this could have been a better opener to the series than a closer. But then would the horror fans who turned their noses up, I'm not pointing the fingers at you guys, I definitely don't think that's the case, where we look at Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, where it's the night he didn't come home. There's no Michael Myers. Would horror... It's that kind of catch-22. Do you think horror fans would have accepted that?
See, I'm sort of in two minds about Halloween Season of the Witch because, I mean, I personally love it. I think it's great. I wonder, with the advent of the internet and audience expectations, would that movie be more successful today? Because you know, audiences were expecting Michael, and there's really kind of no way to let the mass populace know that he's not in it until they go to see it. But what's interesting is that David Gordon Green, whether it's by design or whether it's just inadvertently did it, he's actually kind of made the entire history of slasher movies across 3 films, because you have his first Halloween, which is this very important restart to the franchise, really kicks everything off, more reliant on suspense and so forth. So that's kind of like Halloween in 1978. Then you get into the Friday the 13th, My Bloody Valentine era with Halloween Kills, which is basically successions of violence in different circumstances. And what maybe 3 is his version of a sort of Friday the 13th Part 7 / Nightmare on Elm Street, which is a more metaphysical horror film. And that's great, but the thing is, when you're trying to create a cohesive trilogy, those things don't mix in the one timeline. Individually, they might be brilliant, and I think we can all agree that we did like Halloween Ends individually, but when you're part of the Halloween franchise, when you're telling supposedly a linear story, I just think the jumps in time and logic and atmosphere just didn't work.
Yeah, I can't disagree with anything you're saying. Adam, coming back to that point that I made at the start, my rambly way, Jim was very coherent, much more structured than I was. The idea, in my heart of hearts, I think this would have been a better opener for the new franchise. But that catch-22 situation, I don't think horror fans and Halloween fans would have probably accepted it.
Yeah, it's one of those things. They want to sell T-shirts with Michael Myers on it. I mean, they want to sell coffee cups. Everybody's not going to be wearing Corey masks come Halloween. But just to jump on your point, Jim, I think why I liked this movie was the tonal change and stuff like Nightmare on Elm Street. I love New Nightmare. You know, I love Bride of Chucky, the changed Chucky. I love Friday the 13th, Part 6. You know, it's not a total change, but it changes it back from 5. I think this is not what people wanted, but it's what the people deserved. For me, anyway.
Okay, you can stick that on the poster, Adam. I don't think we've collectively been as down on this film as some of the reviews I've read. I have very sniffy 1-star, 2-star reviews. I just think it's deeply flawed. And as I said at the start, we could probably talk about this the rest of the entire show, but we do have 2 more movies to talk about. So with that, let's move on to this week's Pick of the Streams.
Tonight, it is every hunter for themselves.
Good luck. I'll be rotting for you.
But one of you is a monster, masquerading as one of our own. I can't wait to find out what breed of evil you are. You'll wanna see this, darling.
So that's a look at Werewolf by Night. It's available now on Disney+. This caught me by surprise. It was a friend of the show, Aaron Flanagan from the Comic Book Guys, recommended we talk about it. So we are doing that. It's, as I said, it's available now on Disney+. It's just in time for Halloween. An interesting new segue for Marvel in their Phase 4, going down a more horror route. Alas, the promised Sam Raimi Doctor Strange trip into the horror genre didn't really work out that successfully. So I'm going to come to you first, Adam. Were you a fan? I don't know if we've really talked about comic books with yourself. I don't know if you're a big comic book reader. I had never heard about this before watching it. As I say, it was Aaron recommended it to me. Give it a shot. Thought we'd talk about it in the TV show. What did you think?
Unfortunately, Jim, I have tens of thousands of comic books in my house that just bundle up every week as I absorb Marvel like a big nerd. Werewolf by Night is one of those characters that when you're reading a crossover event in Marvel, he's in the corner with like Moon Knight and Blade, and you're like, what's that Wolfman doing there? I've never really read Werewolf by Night. It's one of those old classic Marvel, like 60s, whenever they were just making monster magazines. So you had like Dracula, that man thing who shows up in this. So it wasn't really something that I was like, yay, Werewolf by Night. Watching it, it was okay. I enjoyed it for what it was. I'm happy to see that Marvel's not committed to the idea of, oh, let's just do a 6-episode TV show. Let's just do an hour-long short movie to introduce this side of the Marvel Universe. It's an exciting branch that I'm looking forward to seeing in the future, but this outing was a bit boring for me. I liked some of the designs, but like dialogue-wise, acting-wise, everything else was a bit there for me.
Yeah, I think coming into watching this, having just watched the She-Hulk finale, which, whether you guys have been watching that series or not, I have adored. I think it's been very clever. I said this last week or 2 weeks, it's hard to keep track of time. For me, She-Hulk has felt like Marvel's first really TV show, other than What If, the sense of structurally it is a TV show. It's not just a movie condensed down into 6 or 8 pieces. I like the fact that this was 55 minutes. I was pleasantly surprised when I clocked on to Disney+. Other streaming services are, of course, available. And seeing 55 minutes as a runtime, okay, happy days. I will be going to bed early this evening. And yeah, I don't disagree with anything you said. I think it's a bit clunky in its narrative. Visually, I was impressed. There's a lot of nods back to kind of the early kind of James Whale kind of time of horror, the Universal monsters. I think the thing that surprised me most about the whole thing, yes, we have a local actress in Laura Donnelly in one of the leading roles, and in the role of Elsa, which Adam kindly reminded me before we came to this segment. But the fact that it's Michael Giacchino is directing here, who I just know primarily as a composer. Turns out he has directed a few shorts before. I think that says it all about this as a film, when that is the most surprising thing. When your closing credits are happening and that is the thing that takes your attention, I think it's fine. I would like to see Marvel do more of this kind of one-shot, 55, 60 minutes. They could have easily done it with stuff like Moon Knight. They didn't need to be a TV series. Not everything needs to be a TV series these days. I know we live in the world of the expanded universe and we crave content, but I think it's refreshing to see that if this is going to be something Marvel is going to do, not just necessarily with this character, but with other characters, just do it as a one-shot, see what happens, and see maybe if they want to do, next Halloween, another Werewolf by Night. I don't know. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. I think the fact that it's 55 minutes was reassuring for me. But Jim, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start this. No offense, Adam, but I'm a DC man by nature, and I did love the Marvel universe. I think that, just in my opinion, I am suffering from Marvel fatigue. I think that Endgame was a perfect finale, and everything after that, including No Way Home, for me, feels kind of unnecessary. So, I went in with fairly low expectations, but immediately what really struck me was, the cinematography. I think it's absolutely brilliant. And as you say, it definitely goes back to the sort of Lon Chaney Jr., Wolfman, that sort of Kirk Sidemak storyline, which is wonderful. I love the fact that Michael Giacchino's directing it. He, as you say, as a composer, I think he's done probably the best, movie scores in the last 15 years. You get the Batman, Rogue One, Super 8. And he comes from that J.J. Abrams school of filmmaking, which is on the one hand beautifully nostalgic, but also seemingly knows how to make a good 1980s style action movie. And so I was like, okay, well, this will be interesting. And there were parts of it where you could really see his flair as a director coming out. The sort of transformation scene and so forth was really, really good. But my problem with it is it just wasn't an interesting story to me. I think the story really lagged the humor didn't, didn't sit well. I just didn't really respond to it. I think that the actual story itself was fairly mundane. The performances were a tad iffy in parts. It was a fine watch, but I'm not really, again, it didn't reignite my love of Marvel, and I wouldn't be interested in seeing future developments of the Werewolf story.
Okay, no problem. I will say this, and listening to you, Jim, and to an extent as well listening to yourself, Adam, not that I don't take your views on board, it did feel a little bit like a proof of concept, a really glorified proof of concept, because it feels like you've stepped in to this world. There is, to a certain extent, a bit of prior knowledge required, which I didn't have. I wasn't familiar with the characters. I wasn't familiar with this series as a comic book, which was both reassuring for me, because the likes of Guardians of the Galaxy, I didn't know a thing about, and it just took me by the hand, and I adored it. And yeah, I mean, I criticize short films when they feel like proof of concepts, so why not criticize something like this? But coming back to the point, I said it was 55 minutes. It wasn't trying to set anything up. It wasn't trying to make me watch other shows or other movies. It was its own thing. So I enjoyed it as a bit of cinematic fluff for what it was. But I didn't necessarily adore it. And unlike you, I wouldn't mind seeing more Werewolf by Night. If this is going to maybe be an annual thing with Marvel, they'll do it around Halloween. I don't know, Adam, I know you said you're not overly invested in the characters from the comic books, but when you want to see more Werewolf by Night?
No.
Well, you heard it here first, and I think with that then, on that positive note, we shall move on and wrap up this week's show. Normally, at this stage, we talk about our DVD of the week, but we're going to be shameless this week. We are screening What We Do in the Shadows, not the TV series, the movie from 2014. So why not talk about that instead of a DVD? Sure, it's a dead medium anyway. So let's play a clip.
You let a vampire hunter into our house.
Wait a minute, I'll just give him my email. He doesn't... Kill you! I'm already dead!
You will not eat the camera guy, maybe one camera guy.
What the f*** did he do, boy? Hey, that was... Don't swear. What are we?
Werewolves, not werewolves.
When you're a vampire, you become very sexy.
So that's a look at the mockumentary, What We Do in the Shadow. We are, of course, screening this. As I said, we're going to be shameless. What's the point if you don't, produce and host a TV show and you can't be shameless and shamelessly plug your own content? So we're going to be screening this at the Black Box on Saturday, the 29th of October. This is 2014 mockumentary that documents a group of vampires in New Zealand. Jermaine Clement and Taika Waititi. Jim, I'm going to come to you first. Are you a fan of this film?
Yeah, when it came out, I was initially a really big fan of it, and I love mockumentary movies. I think when it comes to that cast like Taika Waititi and Jermaine Clement and so forth, that semi-improvisational sense of humor really is where they come into their own. I think their scripted stuff just isn't as intriguing or funny. And I love vampire movies. I love the sort of nods to Nosferatu, and I think there's actually one or two bits that are kind of scary a little bit. And I think that one of the things that I don't think gets enough praise for is how really, for a low-budget film, it's so technically proficient. There's an amazing sequence of a vampires fighting in a sort of rotating hallway, and it's so brilliantly executed for a low budget, under the radar New Zealand film. Having said that, I do think it lags a little. It becomes fairly one note, which is why, as Laszlo says in the TV show, my good lady wife and I prefer to watch the television show. I think that the fact that they can kind of shift narratives and bring in new characters and so forth kind of adds a little more to it than the feature film does. And you can't argue with how brilliant Matt Berry is in this role.
It's important that you mention the TV show, Jim, because before I ever watched it, I had this film up on a pedestal, going, we don't need to have a TV series. This is perfect in its own right. And watching it again for the TV series, watching it again for the TV show this week, I've realised just how much I love the film still, but how much I absolutely adore the TV series now, in particular. And that's not just because we have one of the greatest cameos ever in TV shows with Mark Hamill popping up in that. But everything you say, I agree with, in that sense that it's low budget. It does what Mel Brooks used to do really well. It's satirising the horror genre. It's looking and poking fun at the horror genre and the vampire genre, but does it from a place of knowledge. It knows it inside out, it's looked at, it's able to riff on it. It's not just what we've got nowadays where let's just put a pop culture reference in Vampires Suck or whatever it is, or Scary Movie. It's that sense, it knows what it's doing, it's structured, it's been well thought out, and I'm someone who finds Taika Waititi very, very funny, and he can make me laugh very, very easily, and I would recommend, if anyone watching hasn't seen this, of course come to our screening, of course come to that, but give this a go if you've never seen it, because I think in terms of mockumentaries, in terms of a horror movie, it knows what it's doing, and it's been well thought out, and that's, I think, why you see that paying dividends in front of the camera. Adam?
The movie has Jermaine Clement's face on a cat, and the show has Jackie Daytona, so it's a real... those are the level of humor for me for both. I really like this movie. I prefer Taika Waititi when he's a little bit more serious. His Boy movie, I think, is his best movie. And this is the starting point for me where I thought this was incredible and hilarious and showed it to so many people when it came out. Now it's just went downhill on Taika being less and less funny and just more and more annoying to me. But Jermaine Clement, brilliant. The guy that plays Deacon, is it? I don't know. I wish he was in more. He's hilarious. The bit where they all sit around and watch him dance is hilarious. Going to the bouncers asking, can we come in, because they're vampires, they're not allowed in unless they're asked. And the line, he ate the chips, will always make me laugh. But definitely watch the movie. If you enjoyed the show, see this as a prequel, because these characters do turn up in the show at one point. It's the same type of humor, same silliness, but also, like you both said, technically, they've done the research. It's not a mess about like you get with your spoof films. It is a proper, actual vampire movie that just happens to be a bit silly.
I totally agree, and that's a perfect place to wrap up, and we shall move on and bring this show to a close as we pick our film of the week. Okay, so this is the point where everybody has been waiting on tenterhooks. Every week we talk about each individual movie, nobody cares. They want to get to this point where we know what is the movie of the week. I get a sense, I know where we're going to go. I might be wrong. But Jim, I'm going to come to you first. What is your movie of the week and why?
Well, I mean, I can't disappoint my fan base, so I have to say Halloween. Halloween Ends. And it's my film of the week because it's out of them all, it's the one I enjoyed singularly watching the most.
Well, you haven't watched it singularly, you've watched it 3 times. That's the key thing, and you probably will go see it a 4th.
Yes.
Yes, so there we go. So we knew that, we get a sense of it. What about you, Adam? What's your film of the week?
Halloween Ends for me as well is my film of the week. But go see What We Do in the Shadows at the Dark Ages Film Festival this Halloween.
Yeah, thank you very much, Adam, for that plug. I will say, as much as I think it's a flawed film, I'll throw my hat in with you too. I will say Halloween Ends as my film of the week. Why? Because it's not Halloween Kills. That's why. That is purely the reason. If you have had the misfortune to watch Halloween Kills, you will know why Halloween Ends is a much superior film in every possible way. So that's all we've time for this week. So all that's left for me to do now is thank my 2 guests. So thank you very much, Jim.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you very much, Adam.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks very much for watching at home. We'll be back next week with a Halloween special, a found footage Halloween special. So you've that to look forward to. But for now, until then, goodbye.